The trail stretched endlessly before the rancher, a ribbon of dust and stone wending through the plains, carrying him toward the horizon where the sun blood red against the sky. His boots struck the earth in steady rhythm, a sound almost swallowed by the vast silence of the land. The evening air was dry, carrying with it the faint scent of sage and earth baked by the day's heat. He walked with the patience of a man long accustomed to solitude, the brim of his hat pulled low, his thoughts drifting with the rhythm of his steps. He had spent years walking this land, every mile etched into memory, but that night the air felt heavier, as though it carried a secret waiting to be revealed. The hawk's cry broke the silence, sharp and distant, circling high above as though it too sensed something unusual below. The rancher narrowed his eyes, squinting against the fading light, and that was when he saw it, a dark shape on the trail, still and fragile against the earth. At first he thought it was nothing more than a fallen branch or a shadow stretched long in the dusk. But as he drew closer, his chest tightened. It was a foal, young and frail, its legs twisted beneath it, its head resting limp against the dirt. Its sides rose and fell with shallow breaths, each one weaker than the last. The sight rooted him where he stood, a strange heaviness filling his chest. He approached slowly, his boots crunching softly until he crouched beside it. Dust clung to its coat, ribs visible beneath thin skin, eyes half-lidded and clouded with exhaustion. The foal did not flinch at his presence, it had no strength left to resist. Only the faintest tremor shivering through its body as it struggled to cling to life. The rancher's hand hovered for a moment before settling gently against its neck. Warmth met his palm, faint but present. He closed his eyes briefly, considering. This land was unforgiving and not every creature survived. He had seen the cycle countless times. The strong endured, the weak faded into the dust. Logic told him this was not his burden. He could walk away, leave nature to its course. But as the foal trembled beneath his hand, something old and buried stirred within him. Memories of days when he too had fallen, broken under weight too heavy to carry, only to be lifted by a hand that refused to let him go. That memory anchored him, cutting through hesitation. He unslung his canteen, twisting the cap with deliberate care, and tilted it toward the foal's lips. At first there was no response, then a weak flick of the tongue, catching the drops. Encouraged, he poured more, watching as the foal swallowed slowly, clumsily, but with the faint hunger of life refusing to yield. He whispered words of reassurance, not for meaning but for comfort, a low rumble meant to steady the silence. The foal drank until it could no more, then let its head fall back with a weak sigh. The rancher sat back, scanning the horizon. No herd, no mother searching, alone, abandoned or left behind because it could not keep pace. His jaw tightened. He knew the miles that stretched between here and his ranch, knew the weight he would carry, the risk of exhaustion, the danger of predators in the night. But the decision had already been made. He would not walk away. With slow, deliberate movements, he slid his arms beneath the foal, lifting its fragile body. The weight was lighter than expected, yet awkward, every limb dangling, every breath a reminder of its fragility. The foal pressed weakly against his chest, surrendering itself to him. Rising, the rancher steadied himself, shifting the burden in his arms, and turned toward home. The trail stretched long, shadows lengthening as the sun sank behind the horizon. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries sharp and haunting. But he did not falter. Each step was deliberate, each breath measured, his own strength now tied to the fragile rhythm of the life he carried. The moon rose, silver light washing over the land, guiding him through meadows where the grass swayed and canyons where shadows gathered thick. He whispered softly to the foal, telling stories of rivers that shimmered in moonlight, of valleys wide and green, of herds running free. The words filled the silence, gave weight to the night, a rhythm that carried them both forward. Hours passed. His arms burned, his back ached, sweat clung cold against his skin, but he did not stop. He paused only once beneath an old tree, laying the foal gently onto the grass, watching the stars wheel silently overhead. He drank sparingly, saving more for the foal than for himself, before lifting it once more and pressing on. By the time dawn touched the horizon with pale light, the outline of his ranch appeared. A weathered fence, a small stable, the promise of shelter. Relief swelled in his chest as he pushed the gate open, carrying the foal inside. He laid it gently onto a bed of straw, the smell of hay filling the air, comforting and warm. Fetching water, he guided it to the foal's lips, watching as it drank more eagerly this time. He softened oats, placing them within reach, and though the foal only nibbled, it was enough. The rancher leaned back against the wooden post, exhaustion heavy in his bones, but his eyes never closed. He watched, he guarded, as though the fragile life before him was the only task that mattered. Outside, morning stirred, the calls of birds, the restless shuffle of horses in the pasture, the world continuing as always. But for the rancher, nothing would ever be the same. He had chosen not to walk away, and in that choice something deep within him had begun to change. The foal blinked, eyes clearer now, lifting its head just enough to meet his gaze. In that silence, two lives entwined, one broken, one hardened, both finding strength in the other. Fate had placed them together, and from that moment forward, their story would be bound as one. The days that followed tested both the foal and the rancher in ways neither could have expected. Morning light spilled into the stable, painting the rough wood in shades of gold as the rancher stirred from his cot in the corner. He had not slept much, only dozing in brief snatches, his ears attuned to every shift and sigh the foal made in the straw. Each morning he knelt beside it, offering water from a tin pail, coaxing it with patient hands. At first the foal could barely lift its head, its neck trembling with the effort, but slowly, stubbornly it learned to drink on its own, lips brushing against the cool surface of the water with growing eagerness. The rancher fed it mash made from oats softened with milk, spooning it gently when the foal's strength failed, whispering encouragement in that low, steady tone. Hours passed in the quiet rhythm of care, refilling buckets, adjusting blankets, stroking the foal's neck when it shivered in the chill night air. The rancher found himself speaking aloud more often than he had in years, his words no longer locked inside but flowing freely in the company of a listener who never judged, never answered, only listened. He told of the years he had spent alone on the ranch after loss had hollowed his life, of mistakes made and paths abandoned, of the silence that had grown so heavy it had nearly crushed him. And though the foal could not understand his words, its presence softened the edges of grief, each blink of its dark eyes a reminder that life clung on even when the world seemed determined to take it away. Nights were the hardest. Coyotes prowled beyond the fence, their yips and howls threading through the darkness. The rancher sat by the stable door with his rifle laid across his knees, lantern flickering beside him, keeping watch until the first hints of dawn broke the sky. Some night storms rolled in, thunder echoing across the plains, rain hammering against the roof. The foal would shiver and attempt to rise, eyes wide with fear, and the rancher would kneel steadying it with calm hands, whispering until the trembling eased. In those hours he felt more alive than he had in years, not because the work was easy but because it mattered. One evening, weeks after that first night, he watched as the foal pushed itself up onto its legs without his help. Its limbs wobbled dangerously, threatening collapse, but it stayed upright, head high, eyes bright with determination. The rancher's breath caught as he watched it stumble forward, only a few steps before falling into the straw, but the attempt alone filled him with pride. The next day it tried again, and again the day after that, each time stronger, steadier, until at last it managed to walk a short circle around the stall. The rancher could not help but smile, a sound like laughter breaking free from his chest, startling even himself. The foal pricked its ears at the sound, then pressed its head into his chest as if to claim the victory as their own. Soon the time came to lead it outside. The rancher opened the stable doors and guided the foal into the pasture, the sun warm on its back, the earth soft beneath its hooves. At first it clung to his side, unsteady and uncertain, but curiosity soon tugged it forward. The foal sniffed at the grass, lifted its head to the wind, then took a tentative step away. Its legs trembled but held. Another step, then another, and suddenly it was moving, clumsy yet free. The rancher leaned on the fence, arms folded, heart swelling as he watched. The land seemed brighter with the foal upon it, as though the world itself acknowledged this fragile victory. Days turned into weeks, and with each sunrise the foal grew stronger. Its coat gleamed in the sun, its eyes shone with vigor, and its steps grew surer. It began to trot clumsily across the pasture, then to gallop, dust rising beneath its hooves. The rancher watched with awe as the creature that had once lain broken on the trail now raced with life, mane flying, tail streaming behind it like a banner. In those moments he felt hope return, fragile at first but growing stronger, the kind of hope he had thought lost forever. Neighbors who passed along the trail noticed the change. They spoke of the foal, of its spirit, of the way the rancher himself seemed different, lighter, steadier, a spark in his eyes not seen in years. He answered their curiosity with little more than a nod or a quiet smile, for the bond he shared with the foal was not one to be explained in words. It was forged in silence, in long nights and weary days, in the unspoken understanding that they had saved each other. Still, challenges remained. One night a storm swept down from the mountains, fierce and sudden, tearing across the plains with howling wind and sheets of rain. The foal bolted in fear, slipping in the mud, but the rancher was there, guiding it back to the stable, his arms steady even as lightning split the sky. They weathered the storm together, the rancher's voice a steady murmur above the roar of thunder, until at last the clouds broke and dawn came soft and gentle once more. With every trial endured, their bond grew deeper. The rancher found himself no longer drifting through his days but shaping them with purpose. He rose with the sun not out of duty but out of desire, eager to tend to the foal, to watch it grow, to see what each new day would bring. And the foal, once weak and broken, now met him each morning with eager steps, a bright whinny, a head thrust against his shoulder as if to say, "We are here, we are alive, and we go forward together." As spring ripened into summer, the foal transformed before the rancher's eyes, its body filling out, legs once frail now long and strong, each stride carrying confidence. The ranch, which had once echoed only with the whisper of wind and the creak of old wood, now rang with the sound of hooves striking earth, of whinnies that rose sharp and joyful into the sky. The rancher found himself waking before dawn not out of habit alone but from excitement, eager to step into the pasture and watch the young horse stretch into the morning, chasing shadows across the fields. The bond between them deepened with every sunrise, each day layering trust upon trust. The rancher would walk the pasture, and the horse would follow, pressing its muzzle into his shoulder, nudging his hand, eyes bright with devotion. He spoke to it as he worked, his words weaving into the hum of daily chores, no longer empty conversations with the land but living exchanges that filled the silence. He no longer ate his meals alone, for the horse grazed close by, lifting its head as though listening when he shared his thoughts. Neighbors began to visit more often, drawn not only by the horse's beauty but by the change in the man himself. They noted the way he stood taller, the way laughter found him more easily, the way his eyes held light again. He answered their questions with quiet pride, though he rarely told the full story. The journey from trail to pasture, from weakness to strength, belonged to them alone, a secret stitched into the fabric of their days. Still, the land held its challenges. Coyotes lingered at the edge of the fields, their eyes glowing in the night, hungry and watchful. The rancher doubled the strength of the fences, walking the perimeter each evening with a lantern, rifle slung across his back, determined to guard what had become more precious than anything he owned. He found himself unafraid of the long nights now, for the purpose in his heart outweighed the weariness in his bones. Storms returned too, sweeping across the plains with thunder that rattled the windows. But this time the horse stood taller, braver, no longer a trembling foal but a creature that trusted the steady presence at its side. The rancher stroked its neck as lightning flashed, whispering calm words, and together they endured. With each trial they grew stronger, more bound to one another. One morning, when the air was crisp and the horizon painted in pale gold, the rancher brought out a saddle. He had waited for this moment, patient and careful, never rushing the bond they had built. The horse stood still, ears flicking, eyes watchful, but it did not shy away. The rancher laid the saddle gently across its back, securing the straps with steady hands, speaking softly the whole time. When at last he climbed into the seat, he felt a stillness settle over him, a silence thick with meaning. For a long moment they did not move, horse and man breathing together, the weight of the moment pressing close. Then, with a nudge, the horse stepped forward, carrying him across the pasture. The ride was slow at first, cautious, but with each stride the horse grew more confident, its body adjusting to the new weight, its spirit unbroken. The rancher's hands, worn and calloused, held the reins loosely, trusting, guiding with care rather than command. They circled the pasture once, then twice, the rhythm of hooves steady against the earth, until the rancher let out a long breath he had not realized he was holding. It was not just a ride. It was the culmination of every choice, every sleepless night, every whispered promise. It was proof that the bond they had forged in struggle had carried them here, to a place of trust and freedom. From that day forward the rides grew longer. They crossed meadows where wildflowers bent in the breeze, forded shallow streams where water splashed cool against their legs, and climbed ridges where the wind swept clean and wide across the land. The rancher felt years fall away with each mile, the weight of loneliness lifted, replaced by the steady presence of the companion beneath him. The world no longer felt empty. It pulsed with life, with meaning, with possibility. Strangers they met along the trail marveled at the sight. A weathered rancher and his strong young horse moving as though one, their bond visible in every stride. To others it was a picture of harmony, but to the rancher it was more than that. It was salvation. It was proof that when he had bent to lift a broken foal from the dust, he had unknowingly lifted himself as well. Time moved on as it always does. Summer bled into autumn, leaves turning gold and drifting across the land. The horse grew taller, stronger, sleek with health, muscles rippling beneath its coat. The rancher aged too, his hair silvering, his steps slower on the ground, but his spirit carried a light that had not burned in years. He no longer dreaded the passing of days. Each one was a gift, a chance to ride under endless skies, to share quiet evenings on the porch with his companion grazing nearby. At night he sometimes thought back to that first moment on the trail, to the sight of a fragile life nearly lost. The memory struck him with force, for he knew how easily things might have gone differently. He might have walked on, convincing himself it was not his burden. He might have left the foal to the dust, and his life would have continued in the same empty silence. But he had not. He had chosen to carry it, and in that choice everything had changed. That truth stayed with him, whispered to him in the soft snort of his horse, in the steady beat of hooves, in the quiet companionship that filled his days. Two lives once broken had mended together, bound not by chance alone but by choice, by compassion, by the stubborn will to keep going. Winter came again, sweeping across the plains with a quiet ferocity, laying frost on every fence post and turning the air sharp in the lungs. The rancher rose early each day, breath clouding in the cold, his first steps always toward the stable. The horse was there waiting, larger now, strong and proud, its eyes bright even against the biting wind. He rubbed warmth into its neck, offered grain and water, and led it into the pale light of morning. The land looked different under snow wide and endless, the silence of winter deep and profound. Yet the ranch no longer felt empty. Every sound, the crunch of hooves on frozen ground, the soft whicker of greeting, was proof of companionship that had rewritten the man's life. Together they braved the cold, riding out across drifts that gleamed beneath the low sun, returning each night to the glow of lantern light and the comfort of shared presence. The years passed in this rhythm, seasons shifting, life carrying them forward. The horse grew into full strength, sleek and magnificent, a creature of grace and fire. The rancher aged too, his shoulders stooped a little more, his hair turned silver, but his spirit remained steady, fueled by the bond that had carried him through the hardest days. They weathered storms side by side, crossed rivers swollen with spring melt, and stood together under skies so wide they seemed to swallow the world. Strangers who saw them on the trail often paused, struck by the sight of the weathered rancher and the powerful horse moving as though they shared one heartbeat. They asked for the story, curious about the bond so clearly written in every step, but the rancher rarely spoke of it. Some truths lived deeper than words, woven into silence, into the spaces between breath and heartbeat. What mattered was not how others saw them but how they knew each other, two lives intertwined in ways only they could understand. On quiet evenings, the rancher sat on his porch with the horse grazing close, the horizon painted in the colors of dusk. He leaned back in his chair, hat tilted low, and felt a peace that had eluded him for years. The land no longer seemed harsh but sacred, every blade of grass, every gust of wind a reminder of the path that had led him here. Sometimes his thoughts returned to that night on the trail, the image of the weak foal lying in the dust. The memory carried weight, for he knew how close it had come to ending differently. He had nearly walked away, nearly convinced himself it was not his burden, but in lifting that fragile life, he had unknowingly lifted himself, finding purpose where he thought none remained. As the years rolled on, their bond only deepened. The horse carried him across ridges and valleys, through storms and sunshine, each ride a testament to resilience. The rancher's body grew slower, his hands more lined, but the fire in his eyes remained, stoked by the companionship that never wavered. And when at last he was too old to ride as far, he still found joy in simply standing beside his horse, hand resting against its warm flank, feeling the steady rise and fall of breath, the pulse of life strong and sure. One evening as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed with fire, the rancher whispered softly to the horse, words almost carried away by the wind. He told it what he had known for years, that it had saved him as much as he had saved it, that its presence had turned silence into song, that its trust had mended parts of him long broken. The horse pressed its muzzle against his chest, steady and gentle, as though it understood. Under that burning sky, man and horse stood together, their silhouettes etched against the horizon, bound by a story that had begun on a lonely trail when one life lay broken and another chose not to turn away. Time would carry them forward as it always does, but their story would remain. A testament to compassion, to resilience, to the power of a single choice. For in saving the foal, the rancher had discovered something greater than survival. He had found redemption, hope, and a bond that no storm, no silence, no stretch of time could ever break. And as the land settled into twilight, the truth echoed softly in his heart, a truth he no longer doubted. That night on the trail, when a weak foal collapsed and he chose to act, he had thought he was saving a life. But in truth, that life had saved him.